So I walk into the square, and I can't even believe what I'm seeing, because it's an amphitheater that will soon host two of my favorite bands of all time, Reliant K and Switchfoot. And listen, if you don't know who that is, you have homework, okay? Abby has absolutely outdone herself tonight. Because listen, I know that concerts are, like live concerts, are not her favorite thing in the world. We are only there because she has heard me talk for years about how some of the favorite nights of my life have been at live concerts with these two bands, and they are playing at the same show tonight. And I did not know that this is what we're doing, and it was amazing. Because tonight they're playing at Janice Live in downtown St. Petersburg. And listen, it's not a competition, but if it were, she won. Okay? Like, I don't know that I would be able to top that. It was an amazing evening. And we sang until our throats were sore, and we made a memory that will forever be one of my favorite nights of all time. And the concert was great, and it was amazing. But my wife's thoughtfulness was priceless to me. And these are the nights we remember, right? These are the nights that kind of mark our relationship, where we feel completely seen and completely loved. And most of us have been on the receiving end of that, but we've also been on the planning end of that too. The one doing the planning, the one paying attention. And what we do is we set aside our wants and our needs, and we focus on loving them the way that they needed us to. And man, there was magic in the air, wasn't there? It was incredible. Even if it wasn't something that we would have planned for ourselves, it didn't feel like a burden, because the love that we have for them was so strong that the sacrifice came naturally. And when we first start dating, we do this by default. Like, this is just what you do. You study each other. We think and we plan and we pay attention, and not just because we're trying to be romantic, although that is true as well. We're trying to win them. And so the studying is natural and it's instinctive. But over time, we slowly lower the bar, and it's easy to get into a routine where we just do the same thing all the time. And listen, don't get me wrong, we spend an embarrassing amount of time at Chili's, okay? But listen, we like it, and it's good. It's solid every time. But the truth is, the dates that stand out and that mark our relationships were the ones that required the most thought. And it's not that we stopped loving each other, and that's why we don't do that anymore. It's just that we stopped studying as hard as we used to. And we're familiar with the phrase, the devil's in the details, but let me tell you something, so is the love. So is the love. And we wake up one day and we wonder, like, how do we get to where we are right now? And we didn't make a conscious decision to start phoning it in, but we did. And it wasn't a dramatic shift, but over the years, you grew, both of you, and your interests change. And if we're not really intentional about it, we can end up loving a version of our spouse that they outgrew years ago. And then we wonder, why doesn't it hit the same way that it did back then? It's not that we stopped loving them, we just didn't notice that their needs changed. And what makes married love so special is not extravagance. Like, it doesn't take thousands and thousands of dollars. It's that feeling of being completely seen and completely loved. And many of us have been married for a long time, and we no longer feel that way. I mean, we still love each other, and the love is sincere. But my question for you today is, what if sincere love's not enough? In the book of 1 Samuel opens, we see a couple who's struggling with this exact thing, actually. If you have your Bible, and I hope you do, go ahead and open it up to 1 Samuel chapter 1. We're going to begin in verse 1. And if you're following along in the YouVersion Bible app, you can hit the event tab, look for Swiss Cove in there as well. Here's what it says, 1 Samuel 1, beginning in verse 1. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zuphite from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jehoram, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had two wives. One was called Hannah, and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. So there's this guy, his name's Elkanah. He has 2 wives, so we're not off to a great start. Okay, it's problematic from the jump. And one of them had kids, one of them didn't. And they would go every year to this place called Shiloh, and they would make sacrifices to God. But it was a traumatic experience, year after year after year after year. We continue on in the text. It says, whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, and the Lord had closed her womb. Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. Now, this is a little bit tricky to walk through. But you caught what it said, right? That the Lord had closed Hannah's womb. It's incredibly difficult and incredibly painful because she wants to have kids, but she can't. And it's not because God was punishing her for some deep, dark, hidden, secret sin. However, he was withholding a blessing. Okay? And to make matters way worse, her rival, Peninnah, never let her forget it. That the thing you want most, you can't have, and I have it. And she found her rival's pain point, and she pressed on that as hard as she could at every opportunity that she could. And Elkanah, he loves Hannah. He loves her deeply, and it tears him up to see his wife suffer like that. And he gives her a double portion of meat all the time. And that is actually meant to honor her, okay? He sees her weeping. He sees that she's not eating. He's there for her, and he actually goes to have a conversation with her and ask her what's wrong. Here's what it says. It says, her husband Elkanah would say to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? And with those words, he ripped open the very wound that he was trying to help heal. He was trying to be there for her, but he opened that wound fresh. Hannah's grieving, at least in part, because she wants to give him a son and can't. And his love for her is sincere, but he doesn't see the depth of her pain. Hannah was carrying this grief internally. She wasn't loud with her pain. We continue on in the text. It says, once they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now, Eli the priest was sitting on his chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house. And in her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, Lord Almighty, if you'll only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. As she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, how long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine. Not so, my Lord, Hannah replied. I'm a woman who is deeply troubled. I've not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I've been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. Eli answered, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. See, Hannah kept her pain so close to the chest that even her husband, who loved her deeply and sincerely, wasn't getting all the way down into the depths of that. And it's not just that he was oblivious or didn't care or wasn't paying attention. And it's really not about her holding it back from him either. Like, what I want you to understand is this is not about assigning blame to one of them. Oftentimes in real life, the deepest pain is the quietest, isn't it? That's the stuff that we don't let anybody see. And even if there is a love that is genuine and sincere in our lives, there's often still a gap between where we actually are and where we let them in. And here's what I need you to see, is that love must be studied, not just sincere. Love must be studied, not just sincere. And maybe one of the most famous romances in all of Scripture is between Boaz and Ruth. And Boaz, he understood this. We read this in Ruth 2, 5-9. It says, Boaz asked the overseers of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?" The overseer replied, "She's the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters." She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I've told the men not to lay a hand on you. And whenever you're thirsty, go get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." So Boaz, before he ever speaks to Ruth, goes and learns about her. And then every single thing that he does is specific. And you see this throughout their relationship. Nothing is accidental. It's not assumed. Boaz asked before he acted. And here's the thing. The God we serve never has to ask, because he knows everything about you. He knows everything you need, and he is moving and working on your behalf. It's true in Ruth's life, in Boaz's life. It was true in Hannah's life as well. Here's how 1 Samuel 1 ends. It says, "Early the next morning they arose and worshiped before the Lord, and then went back to their home at Ramah. Elkanah made love to his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. So in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and she named him Samuel, saying, 'Because I asked the Lord for him.'" It says the Lord remembered Hannah. It's important to note that God wasn't like, "Oh, I forgot. Oh, I forgot about you." That's not what that word means, okay? This specific kind of remembering means to take a specific and knowing action. God knew exactly what was breaking Hannah, and he stepped in to heal a wound that he was the only one who could heal, and that she couldn't even find the words to speak out loud. And it wasn't that God loved Hannah and Elkanah didn't, but where Elkanah had assumptions, God had intimate knowledge. He had intimate knowledge. And you and I have been on both sides of this. You and I have been Elkanah. We love sincerely, and we show up, and we give double portion, and sometimes we're still miles away from the actual issue that we're trying to deal with, miles away from where our spouse is actually living. And that's why Peter tells us this in 1 Peter 3. He says, "Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers." Now, I didn't read the whole passage, but Peter actually begins with instructions to wives. He addresses how they carry themselves in marriage and how they love their husbands. And then he turns to the husbands with verse 7. But here's what I need you to see. Everything we've seen in Hannah's story belongs to everybody in this room. It's not just a portrait of husbands who missed the boat with their wives. He's a portrait of every spouse who loves sincerely and still missed by a mile. Now, if you've been the one who's carrying grief quietly, hoping that your spouse will magically find their way to where you actually live, this is for you. And if you've been the one trying to give the double portion and wondering why it's still not enough, nothing I do is good enough, this one's for you. Study your spouse. They need to be known, not assumed. This will happen in your marriage. It will. Two people can love each other sincerely and miss each other completely because they're loving the other one according to the way that they need to be loved and the assumptions that they have made about what love feels like. It's not even that you're selfish. You're not. You're sincere. You just stop studying because what they need is different than what you need. And ladies, let me chat with you for a second, because husbands place a surprising amount of importance on recreational companionship, okay? Doing life together, having fun together, sharing experience together. I'll tell you this about the men in this room. Almost every one of them bond side by side more than they bond face to face. Am I right, fellas? Yeah. When you were growing up, your best friends were the ones, even right now, your best friends are the ones you do stuff with. That's why when you go axe throwing or when you do something, you go fishing, you see the fellas there. And you go to the coffee shop, you see the ladies there. There are exceptions to both sides of this, I understand. But men bond side by side, and ladies tend to bond face to face. And before marriage, couples do this naturally. They date and they laugh and they go places and they do things together and they have fun. But after marriage, things start to shift because life fills up with all kinds of stuff, with schedules and bills and kids and exhaustion and responsibility. And what happens is the friendship quietly dissolves over time. Not that it's gone, but it's vastly different. And many wives do not understand how deeply that loss impacts their husband, because your husband ain't going to look at you and say, I miss you. They just don't. And he might not even be able to put that into words himself. What will happen is he'll just slowly disconnect. But studied love learns that sometimes what your husband needs is not another conversation, it's companionship. Now, fellas, it's your turn. You didn't think I was going to leave you out, right? Your wives need to feel cherished. Not just loved, they need to feel cherished. And before marriage, we do this instinctively. We pursue and plan and make her feel like the most important person in the room, no matter what room we're in. But after marriage, something shifts, because the focus shifts from wooing to providing. And so he works hard and he shows up and he's responsible and he's faithful, and in his mind, that's love, and it is. But what she's experiencing is not provision, it's being overlooked. He's given the double portion, and she's in the corner weeping and not eating. Studied love learns that your wife doesn't just need you to provide for her. She needs you to pursue her again and still and always. So here's where you start. When you go home today, I want you to ask your spouse this question. What are two things that make you feel most loved? What are two things that make you feel most loved? And tell them yours. Not what you assume, not what's always worked. Ask them. And when you're asked, listen, don't tell them what you think they want to hear. Tell them the truth. Because if you don't tell them the truth, it's not going to get any better. Don't tell them what you think they want to hear. Tell them the deepest and truest answer. We talked about the best marriage advice I was ever given last week, and that's make it easy for them to love you. But your spouse cannot make it easy for you to love them if you won't tell them what makes you feel loved. They can't do that. And the studying that we're talking about this morning starts with this conversation. And here's the thing about all this. Like, you can't study your spouse out of an empty tank. You can't love them well out of an empty tank, because you can't give what you haven't received. The other side of that is you cannot help but give what you have received. And so you need to go back to the source and spend time with your Father, because The God who remembered Hannah is the God who knows you completely right now. Not a version of you, not an assumption about you. He knows what is breaking you and the things that you haven't been able to speak out loud, and he's already moving on your behalf, and he's not even waiting for you to get it together before he does. 1 John 4:19 says, we love because he loved us, and he sent his son Jesus to give his life for us so that we could be forgiven. That's what love looks like. He knew that what you needed wasn't more comfort, but forgiveness. And man, if you've never received that kind of love, today is the day. Today's the day. And please come talk to me before you leave. Please do that. And if you have, man, but you've been trying to love your spouse out of this empty tank, you already know where to go. Go back to your Father. But I need you to understand that nobody accidentally becomes a student of their spouse. It's a decision that we make on an ordinary Tuesday when the romance is thin, the schedule is full, and it would be way easier to just assume, but we ask anyway. We pay attention anyway. We pursue anyway, and that's not normal. The world doesn't have a category for this. For a husband who's still learning his wife after being married for 20 years, or a wife who creates a night that she herself would never have planned if it was just her, because she knows that's what lights him up. The world calls that extraordinary. We call it faithfulness. This is what we're building over here. Not a collection of people who have really great marriages, but a community of people who love the way that God does, with knowledge and with specificity, with the kind of attention that says, I see you. Not a version of you, not who I assumed you were, you. And when the world looks at our marriages and can't explain them, that is a witness, church. That's a witness. The couple who keeps studying each other when it would have been easier to coast is a witness. The husband who pursues his wife when he thought providing was enough is a witness. A wife who tells the truth about what she needed when she would rather have just hoped that he would guess and figure it out. That's a witness. And we show the world a picture of our God who loves us fully, knows us perfectly, and who invites all of us into that kind of relationship where forgiveness and freedom flow freely to everyone. Psalm 139 puts it really plainly. It says, you have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit. You know when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. That's not a general kind of knowledge. That's specific, studied. Except this time, it's God doing the studying, and it's us being fully known. And he didn't just know us from a distance. He didn't just send comfort when what we needed was forgiveness. He knew exactly what would close the gap between us, and he didn't assume, and he didn't guess. He sent his son, Jesus. And that's why we gather, is it not? We gather because he sent Jesus. And we gather to celebrate his death, burial, and resurrection. And in just a moment, we're going to take communion together. And the cup that we're going to take represents his blood, which was shed for you and I. And the bread that we're going to take represents his body, which was broken for us. Ben, the difference between sincerity and knowledge is vast. Elkanah was sincere. God is knowing. And at this table, God says to you what none of us can fully say to one another, and that's, I see you. The deepest parts of you. I don't have to assume. And I gave everything for you anyway. So as we come this morning to the table, don't take these elements out of habit. Let them ask you a question. Have you been loving God out of assumption or out of relationship? And have you let him actually know you? The real parts, the quiet parts, the stuff you've been trying to carry alone. Or you've been giving him a double portion on Sunday and hoping that's good enough. So let's take the bread and remember his body. Let's take the cup and remember his blood, because he knew exactly what you needed long before you ever asked. Let me pray for you, and we'll take communion together.